Approximately 6 years ago, my wife and I took a trip to Italy. We had the fortune to visit Rome, Venice, and Florence. And the beauty that we saw there was absolutely astounding. And as I was completely overwhelmed by the plethora of gorgeous art and architecture that were just beyond, that was so overwhelming, that emotionally overwhelmed by all the architecture and art that was around us all the time, I have to admit that I felt a tinge of jealousy. Because as a Jew, I know that our people were not as talented throughout the generations, throughout history when it came to art and architecture. We don't have that much to boast of when it comes to that. And if that was something that was bothering me, imagine throughout the generations when our bubbies and zaydis, when our grandparents were living in squalid conditions of the ghetto, in the shadow of this beauty of Western civilization. Imagine the jealousy that they must have felt. And I understood then what it means that we're called the people of the book. The facade that we built throughout the generations is the infinite facade of the Holy Torah. And I understood that that is really what the holiday, of course, of Hanukkah is about. That although our physical eyes seem to show us the world that's so full of beauty and color and splendor, but the Jews always knew that the Torah has something that it's worth holding on to, no matter what, throughout the conditions and throughout the circumstances that we had to deal with throughout history. What is it? What is it about Torah that makes it so qualitatively different that it was worth maintaining our loyalty to Torah throughout the generations? So in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics from Sinai, which of course, although it's a book of ethics, but Jewish ethics include not only how we act between us and another person, but of course how we act between us and Hashem, because it's in Judaism, it's two sides of the same coin. And so throughout Pirkei Avot, which is a book of morality, Jewish morality also contains how we have to be connected to Torah. And the whole 6th chapter of Pirkei Avot is called Kinyan Torah, the chapter of the acquiring of Torah. And in order to appreciate the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avot, how the sages teach us what Torah is and how to approach Torah in a qualitatively different way than anything else. So there are two figures, paradigmatic figures, that represent Western civilization, the pinnacle of Western civilization on one hand, and Jewish thought and Torah on the other. And that is the figure, of course, of Socrates. Socrates, who was the greatest of philosophers, who is the foundation of Western civilization, of the clash between Rome and Jerusalem, and Rabbi Akiva on the other hand. Rabbi Akiva, the greatest of the sages of the Mishnah. And Socrates and Rabbi Akiva on one hand seem to have had very similar ends in that they both gave their lives and were executed for what they believed is the most important thing. And in some ways the stories are very similar. Socrates was willing to die for philosophy, which is the greatest of the achievements of humanity. Of course, is the search for truth. Socrates was willing to die for that. And Rabbi Akiva was executed by the Romans for teaching and promulgating Torah. If we look at the stories about their choice, on one hand they seem to be very similar, but there's a profound difference between them. The story of Socrates is found in Plato's dialogue, The Apology, where Plato tells how Socrates was put on trial in Athens for teaching philosophy, where Socrates valiantly stands up in an Athenian court and declares when he's told that he's going to be executed if he continues to teach philosophy, human wisdom, he says, "Men of Athens, I am grateful and I am your friend, but I will obey the God rather than you, and as long as I draw breath and am able, I shall not cease to practice philosophy. To exhort you and in my usual way to point out to any one of you whom I happen to meet, good sir, you are an Athenian, a citizen of the greatest city, with the greatest reputation for both wisdom and power. Are you not ashamed of your eagerness to possess as much wealth, reputation, and honors as possible, while you do not care for nor give thought to wisdom or truth, or the best possible state of your soul?" And so Socrates declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. That to live without seeking truth, without seeking wisdom, without understanding what is beauty, what is love, it's not worth being alive. One is not better than an animal. And we find similar to this a story in the Gemara and Brachos and the tractate Brachos and the Talmud, where Rabbi Akiva was warned that if he continues teaching Torah, he will be executed by the Romans. And Rabbi Akiva said, I will tell you a parable. That one time there was a fox on the riverbank, and the fox saw a fish swimming along in the sea and in the river, and the fox said to the fish, a couple of feet away is a fisherman with a net who's going to catch you maybe. Come up on my back and I'll save you so that the fisherman doesn't catch you with his net. And the fish responded to the fox, you're the one that they say is the smartest of all animals. Don't you understand that if I stay in the water, there's a chance I might live or I might die. But if I come up out of the water, I will certainly die. And Rabbi Akiva said, if I continue teaching Torah, there's a chance maybe I'll be killed or not. But a Jew without Torah is like a fish without water. Torah is our life. And so seemingly these two anecdotes seem to be the same. Rabbi Akiva was willing to die for Torah, just like Socrates was willing to die for philosophy. But if we pay attention, there's a profound difference. Socrates makes a value judgment and says the unexamined life is not worth living. It's not worth living without philosophy. Because as a human being, philosophy is the greatest thing that a human being could do, to philosophize. Rabbi Akiva, with the seemingly simple parable of a fox and a fish, is saying a much deeper idea, is saying that it's not a choice. The fish doesn't choose to stay in the water. That is life. Kihem chayenu, Torah is life, because Torah is God. Like the Zohar teaches, Araisa v'kuchabrichu kulachad. Torah and God are one. In the holy letters of Torah is mamish Hashem's infinite light. By learning Torah and saying the holy words of Torah, one is bringing God's infinite light upon oneself. And to demonstrate how qualitatively different Torah is than other wisdoms, the sages in the 6th chapter of Pirkei Avot of the Ethics from Sinai, the sages teach us, Reb Meir Omer, kol ha'osek b'Torah l'shma, anyone that learns Torah for its own sake. What does that mean to learn Torah l'shma, for its own sake? Tanya teaches in the 5th chapter, it means l'kasher nafsho la'Hashem al yedei hasagas Torah, to connect our soul to God through learning Torah. That's what it means to learn Torah l'shma, that I'm learning Torah not just to understand this idea because God's infinite light is in the letters of the Torah. And so Reb Meir says, if I learn Torah with that intention, to know that I'm encountering God in the holy letters of the Torah. Zoichel advarim harbe, I merit many things. The Tiferes Yisrael says, long life and blessings and success and wealth and kavod. One doesn't merit things from studying philosophy. How come by studying Torah does one zochel advarim harbe, one merits many things? How does that affect the whole world? We see that Torah is not just a personal pursuit of intellectual wisdom. Torah has an effect, a cataclysmic effect on the entire world. It actually brings down blessings and sustenance and success because Torah is the infinite light of Hashem. By learning Torah, we're bringing God into the world, into ourselves, and into the world around us. V'lo od, and not only that, ela shakol ha'olam kulo kedai hu lo. The entire universe is worthy to have been created for this person studying Torah. Seemingly, when it comes to philosophy, is a personal pursuit. I'm studying something. What does it have to do with anything else? No, because Torah is Hashem. By learning Torah, one is bringing God's infinite light into the world. That's why also in the second Mishnah, the Mishnah teaches, Ein lecha ben chern ela misha oisik b'talmud Torah. To have true inner freedom is by learning Torah, because what's freedom? What does it mean that only by learning Torah is one a ben chor? And the sages teach that attaining inner freedom is only by studying Torah. Ein lecha ben chor ela misha oisik b'talmud Torah. Why? When a person learns Torah, one is free from the outer vicissitudes of life, free from having affected from the circumstances around me. Jews always knew that when I learn Torah, I'm going into a refuge of God, an infinite refuge of divine bliss. And therefore, through learning Torah, one comes to that freedom from anything the world has, any challenges the world has. And that's why also in the 6th Mishnah, a little later on, the sages say that there are 48 steps to acquire Torah. And some of these steps don't make sense if we just look at Torah's wisdom. It says one has to have Eima and Yira, fear and trembling, for example. Anova, humility. Why does one have to have humility and fear and trembling? Because learning Torah is connecting to Hashem. Because even though the stories of the Torah seemingly are just stories, just like Rabbi Akiva's metaphor was deceptively simple, the stories of the Torah might just seem like stories, the stories of the Bible. And the ideas in the Talmud seem to be talking about mundane matters of financial laws and the halachic minushe of how to tithe agriculture and how to keep the different customs and mitzvot. But one has to have fear and trembling because one is connecting to Hashem, because Torah has in it God's infinity. And that's why also fascinating, the Mishnah goes on to enumerate when it comes that learning Torah makes me a better human being. That to learn Torah, Chazal teach us, the sages teach us, one has to be oyev esabrios, to love other people, to love humanity. And not just to love humanity, but noise ba'olim chaver, to be compassionate and empathetic to another person. Machrir l'kav schus, to give other people the benefit of the doubt. Mamido ala emes, mamido ala shalom, to bring other people to truth and peace, to care about the other. You know, most philosophers in history were bachelors. Kierkegaard, Schopenhauer, Kant, Nietzsche, they were bachelors. For the most part, philosophers were not involved in the community. Because when a person is involved in wisdom, one wants to be in a state of solitude, thinking about ideas. Torah has to make you a better person. Being a Jew, learning Torah and connecting to God has to make you an empathetic person, to connect to the other, to love other people, to care for other people. Because Torah is God, and God is infinite. Dracheh darchei noam v'chol nesivoseh shalom. All its ways are paths of pleasantness and peace. Torah is God's infinity, and therefore it has to be, when I learn Torah, it doesn't just make me able to feel God in me, it makes me be able to see God in the other. It doesn't just bring divinity into myself and the world around me, but it allows my eyes to be able to see the divine in the other person. And so studying Torah has to be with that state of not just fear and trembling of God, not just a state of awe of the divine, of the infinite light of God that's entering my soul as I'm studying Torah, but I also have to at the same time be able to see the other and love the other person and care for the other person, because Torah is one with God. And the more that I connect to God and bring Hashem into myself through studying Torah, I'm able to see Hashem, see God in the other person. And in that way, we're able to be, like Rabbi Akiva, feel how Torah is the ultimate reality, the water that connects, that we're all swimming in the reality of Hashem, which is life, which is Chaim, Kiyem Chayenu V'Arach Yameinu.